with this wonderful faith. Verse number 32. And what shall I more say? What shall I more say? For the time would fail me to tell of Gideon and of Barak and of Samson and of Jephthah, of David also, and Samuel, and of the prophets. So you can understand that this group of people, you see, he names them 3 by 3, but when he gets to the end of it, that is going to make a great stride of recognizing these people. He started by saying that what of Gideon and Barak and Samson and Jephthah and David and Samuel. When you look into the records of the people that he called over here, they all have something in common. And so he never had the chance to explain, and therefore I wouldn't have the chance to explain, but I can look into the record about Gideon, Barak, and Samson, Jephthah. These men were all, and even Samuel, were all chosen to become what? They were these men, they were all what we call judges. When you look onto the book, they fall under judges. But every portion of these people had something in common called war. God used them to win wars for his people. Gideon, Barak, Samson, and then David. You will see that God had to lead and make them become the judges in order to bring victory unto the people. This group of people, I call them the war of faith. War of faith. You see, sometimes when God is selecting and bringing up some issue, there are people, when God has to put them there, for one reason, that they will be able to battle, not just for, a battle is a long stride, it's a short time stride, but war is a long time projected. And so when God calls you into warring with you to bring victory, it's not going to be one day. It's going to be continuous. And when you look into the records of these men, they were all. But if you look into their behavior, from the beginning how God selected them, none of them deserved to be recognized as a man of faith. But yet in the end, God called them. Let me now turn my attention on one of them this morning, Gideon. Let's look at the life of Gideon. Gideon was a judge at the time of the Midianite. The Midianite had taken the land of Israel. What they do is that they will wait until the barley season is on. Whatever crop that the Israelites had ever made, they will come in by night and they will come and sweep. You know, it's like you will work for them. They will never tell you work for me, but they will try to wait until the barley season is on. When they have put up their wheat, put up all their grain, then they will come in the night to sweep up and pick up all the crops. So then Israel will be empty. So this was what they were faced with. And it came to a point so they came to a point like what? A point by which he will the people were becoming like dwarfs. And so Gideon couldn't come up and then project to go down to blow his wheat. You know, when the chaff is on the wheat, you have to take it to the hill. And then they allow it that in the afternoon there will be the wind. The wind will just blow off all the chaff. This is how they identify that the Israelites are busy on the hilltop. And the enemy will come down and pick up every grain that they had with them. So what happened was that Gideon has to go into the valley. It's unusual. How do you carry your grain into the valley? There's no wind. And so when you lift up the grain and then to let some little wind to blow, it will blow all over you. Can you just see the embarrassment that this man wanted to have something for the family and all these things were? It tells you exactly how timid and how coward this man was. But God, when he allowed the angel of God to go down to speak to him, the address that he addressed him was that, hey, mighty man of valor. Somebody who knows himself as what? He's looking at himself as somebody of no significance. He had no eminence. He's so coward. And so he began to look at them. Wait a minute. Are you calling me mighty man of valor? You don't know who you're talking to. Look at my tribe. I come from the lowest of all the tribe. I'm not more significant to be recognized. Why do you call me mighty man of valor? So he could not believe that he was mighty. So by that time, he could not identify himself as someone who was important. And for God to know him to be the very person that he was being used was such an amazing that he began to ask himself, why is God addressing me this way? You see, God never see from the beginning. He see the end from the beginning. He know what he is capable of using this man. So when this man was giving even flimsy excuse and telling about who his family was, it is as if God doesn't know who he was. God was saying that this is why I chose you. I chose you because you are not somebody. You are nobody. You see, sometimes we feel that we are so adequate. We are somebody special. That's why God chose us. No. God always chooses the weak to shame the mighty. And so God was guaranteed that because you are nobody, I am going to make you. Believe me and trust me, I will do that. Most of the time when you go to places that they say that we have our small Gideon here, when anybody uses Gideon, it's talking about how insignificant they are and how small their group will be. But God chooses the smaller number. He always talk about and say that my little flock. You might be in a big church, but then you begin to feel the very special that this is our church because we are number. God doesn't deal with number. God does always deal with the smallest of the group in order for him to use something. You will go and walk into a church and you will see that they are just about 100 people, not even 20, sometimes even less than 100. But God is so special over there. And you will go to a church that looks like a stadium, and God never shows up there. God doesn't do things like, and every time that has been his method. You know, as if that you think that the church that you go must be flooded, and there must be so renowned people. Beloved, God does with a little group. He called his church my little flock. Gideon never felt so special. By the end, God has to reduced that when Gideon produced 32,000 men, God reduced them to 300 people. God said, I'm going to win this battle with 300. And Gideon trusted him. And Gideon had faith in God. You remember that he was not so faithful at that time. He was asking God, how can you use this number? Okay, if you have sent me, do this, and God will do it. And then he will just come again. He said, and now God, this first test you passed, I think, if you think that I am the one you are going to use, and then he changed the method, and God passed again. So he has no any excuse, but just to fall under within God and to do the whole execution. God used this man to bring up a glory unto himself. Therefore, beloved, always don't count yourself, don't count your strength, don't count that you are somebody. You are nobody. It is the grace of God that God found you. The writer of Hebrew mentions Gideon, and then he mentioned also Barak, and then Samson. I don't know whether I would have put Samson in the list or not. Samson was a real failure as far as his service was concerned. But he did believe God. He did believe God. There was a time when the Spirit of God came upon him and he began to deliver Israel. He never completed the job, however. The writer goes on to mention Jephthah. And then David. Why? God knew what he was doing. All these people were men of valor that God used to bring projection. Look at Samson standing in for the prophet. But the writer makes it clear that that time, any time that we can record will fail him. And therefore, there is no way we can mention any of them and go into details why God will project them as a way of finding something special in their lifestyle. Beloved, if there is anything, it is about the war God used them. Do you have a war faith? Sometimes you are going through battles, but you think that that is the end of what God is going to use you for. I tell you, God is going to use you for greater things. He will move you from battle into war. When God is using you through war, you will get the war, defending your family, defending everything, wherever that you are. When there is any war, God will have to bring in and come for you. Because when you are in the midst of that war, there will be a victory. And therefore, God knows those that he will use for every battle and every war. Those that God can use them for a short time, and that God could use them for projected a long time. And therefore you know the kind of faith. Now let's move on to verse number 33. Who through faith subdued kingdoms, brought righteousness, obtained promises, stopped the mouth of lions. You get it? So now he is now listing what they did. How they stopped the mouth of lions. Through faith, they subdued kingdoms and brought righteousness. This is some of the reports of those that were mentioned, Gideon, Barak, and others. So he was telling exactly what it is, but he never pointed that this is what Barak did. This is what Gideon did. But was now fulfilling it. Stop the mouth of lions. Who do you think will be the person that stopped the mouth of lion? We know that that man's name isn't mentioned here. Why? It's one of the prophets, because the Bible says that, and the prophets, Daniel was the one who was put in the lion's den. And the morning, the king thought that by that morning, the lion may have eaten him up. Next morning, he saw that Daniel was still living. So the Bible was mentioning, even though he couldn't find his name here, he's part of the prophets. When he looked at the scripture, it says that, and Samuel and of the prophets. So he was going to mention some of them, not by so they were all champions and people that God used them for a war. Quench the violence of fire. escaped the edge of sword, out of weakness were made strong, waxed valiant in fight, turned to fight the armies of the aliens. This is the war of faith, and these are the victors. We see now the wilderness of faith. Faith has moved into every area of our lives. Who are the wilderness of faith? Women received their dead raised to life again. Who was that? The Shunammite woman. And others were tortured, not accepting deliverance, but they might obtain a better resurrection. Who were they? Women received their dead raised to again. Remember the widow of the Zarephath, whose son Elijah raised back to life. 1 Kings chapter 17, verse 17 to 24. And others were tortured, not accepting deliverance, that they might obtain a better resurrection. In other words, he is now talking about the martyrs, those that are the martyrs, those that were killed. Who are they? And others had trial of cruel mockings and scourgings, yea, moreover, of bounds and imprisonment. They were stoned, they were sawn asunder, were tempted, were slain with a sword. They wandered about in sheepskins and goatskins, being destitute, afflicted, tormented, of whom the world was not worthy. They wandered in desert and in mountains and in dens and caves of the earth. Here is another group of people. They didn't gain great victories out of a battlefield. They didn't enter the arena of life before large audience and perform great feat for God. These are the others, and they are the ones who, if you want heroes, are really God's heroes. They had trials and mockings and scourgings and bound and imprisonment. They were stoned and they were sawn asunder. Jeremy insists that it was Isaiah who was sawn asunder. But of course, that is only tradition. We don't know who suffered that cruel, horrible death. And others were tested, tempted, and slain by the sword. God was noticing and declaring all these people. I want to notice the contrast here. Back in the verse number 33 and 34, when we are talking about the victories which were won, it spoke of how they subdued kingdoms, wrought righteousness, obtained promises, stopped the mouth of lions, quenched the violence of fire, escaped the edge of the sword. They escaped the edge of the sword. But here in verse 37, the others were slain with a sword. How do you explain this? One group by faith escaped the edge of the sword, and another group by faith were slain by the sword. We come to the question, which is still to me a very difficult subject. Why do the righteous suffer? That's the question. Why do the righteous suffer? I don't know whether you have come to that question one time, that why do I have to suffer? Why do I have to? I am doing everything, paying my tithes and fasting. I'm always on the line every morning and everything. Why do the righteous suffer? You see, people were made to escape the edge of the sword. Others were made to face the sword. And so you cannot understand what it is. I know that if you are in good health today it is easy for you to toss it off and say of others, well, God is testing me. However, these people went through all these things by faith. They didn't look upon it as if they were being tested. They endured because they did it by faith. They could trust God when the day was dark, when the night was long, the suffering was intense, and when there was no deliverance for them at all. Others were tortured. Others were slain by the sword. It is wonderful to be able to get up and quote scripture, Psalm 34, which says, the angel of the Lord encamped around about them that fear him, and delivereth them. The righteous cry, and the Lord heareth, and delivereth them out of their troubles. Psalm 34, verse number 7, and then verse number 17. That is a wonderful psalm, is that not it? But what about when you have prayed, and you have fasted, and then you see that the issue comes? You've just done everything that you will. You go to court, and then your case is tossed out, and you lose the battle. Do you still trust the Lord? I've seen people coming on this line. They think that by the time they come, by the time we are close, their prayer is solved. And so when they come in 1 month, 2 months, 3 months is the same, oh, you see them slacking, not coming on again. When even you call them, they won't pick up the phone. Those that will pick up, he said that the pastor will be coming, knowing very well that you will never see them again. You see, why? Because they could not wait, they could not endure. And the troubles that made them to come on the line could not disappear. And therefore they continue coming is nonsense. It doesn't make sense. Why would I just sacrifice my sleep and come on in the morning, early morning, 3 a.m.? But beloved, ask me and talk to Brother Chris whether he has gotten everything that made him to come on the line. Ask Minister Ineka. Ask her whether everything that brought her on the line, she's had it. Ask Sister Dr. Uju. Ask all these men and women that I'm calling their names. They are still holding on. Some have been for over a 10 years period. Continuous and coming, enduring. No matter what the situation is, they are not giving up. These are the men I call faithful. Beloved, for you to be somebody that can be recognized is endurance. All these people that we are talking about is endurance. None of them came in one day and relented and just left off. They stood forth, whether it is raining. At the time, I may just say that today it's not a good time. I just turn the telephone on, and I will see faithful people still going on. Some will just come exactly 2 minutes to the time, 3 minutes to the time. I have record to prove how the people even enter the line. And I know some people will come before everybody comes on, and they have never failed that time. Here is a man that I can always strike the difference. Look at our brother Chris. Every morning, by the time anybody comes on, he is already on. He comes on and says, Pastor, I can't sleep past 3:30. I am just up. Here is a man who was saying that, how can I come on at 4 a.m.? Oh, it's not going to be. But what has changed? That the man could now stand in all the time. And these are the faithful. You see, when we are calling, it's like they are too far away. They are just near us. They are doing exactly like you. Minister Neka, 10 years in this worship, she had never failed. And so you begin to stand in and begin to say that I came in and my trouble was not being here. Oh, beloved, get over it. Get over it. God wants people who will endure. Endure. He said, why do I have to suffer? Why would you not suffer? Are you better off than the people that were recorded? Some were sown asunder. Some, do you know how some people were sown? Isaiah was put on the back of a tree, and they saw they sold him like they were just chopping him off. And that's the way a man of that stature, prophet of that greatness, that's how he died. Men, valuable men, better than you and I, they endured it. They never relented. They ran into this very faithfulness, and they were running even into their death. When you look into the martyrdom, those that were in the New Testament that were not named, look at Peter. Look at all the people who died. John the Baptist, they had to put him in a barrel and then throw him into the sea. And therefore, it was when the sea was rolling in the island, small island called Patmos. That's where he got his revelation and began. These men did not die. The way they wanted to kill John. John was an incredible. They brought him up on a mountain, and then they threw him down. They went back. John was still alive. They put him in a hot oil. Then they want to boil him to fry him like a donut. The time came, John just sprang back, and he was still. They said, this man we cannot kill. So they put him in a barrel and threw him off. This man came back and wrote the book of Revelation. You see, these are the men that stood forth. You are going through some little crisis that is not making you to feel financial difficulty. You are not serving God. Why? Because you think that God has closed up on you. Look at these faithful men. They stood there and they will never give up anything. Let me now run it out. Verse number 39. And these all have obtained a good report. Through faith, receive not the promise. Now God, having provided some better thing for us, that they without us should not be made perfect. Wow. They without us will not be made perfect. You see, they did all these things, championing their faith, championing everything, so that you and I can also walk in one day to become the children of God. That if we are not included, they will not be made perfect. So their cry was looking into the future, where pastor will just be a child of God, where Noah will be a child of God, where you see all these men were looking straight onto your coming into the kingdom, and they sacrificed so much that today we are reading off. Don't ever get into God's space and talk about that I am alone, I'm going through this alone, I'm the only one suffering. Get over it. The people were sewn asunder. Some God had to make them to wander in caves and in dens. You are sleeping on a mattress. You sleep on your mattress and you're still complaining. Some were sleeping in caves. They never had even pillow to sleep on. They used stones to be their pillows. And these are the men we have to emulate. May God help us so that as we're thinking through, we will always be shutting up and rather bring a praise unto God. It doesn't matter how I find myself. It matters who God is leading me. May God champion us. May God lead us throughout this age, now and forevermore. Amen.